Hi, and welcome to the Urban Tech VC, a podcast for urban leaders shaping the cities of tomorrow. If you love our show, do drop us a review, share it with your friends, and follow 2BX on LinkedIn or Instagram. Today, we're happy to welcome Daniel, CEO and founder at wundertax, the tech startup he co-founded in 2016 and returned to as a CEO in 2022. Daniel is a growth-orientated entrepreneur who has founded and built high-growth companies in 6 countries. He has 10 years of international experience scaling businesses with a focus on technology, marketing, finance, and venture capital. Daniel is passionate about sustainability, fitness, and problem solving, be it relocation or access to government services. Outside of work, Daniel is a comedian, best known for his stand-up and improv performances. He believes comedy is the best sideline to a CEO's more serious job of helping taxpayers maximize their tax returns while minimizing tax return time. If you're an urban tech founder about to raise a round, do reach out to us. We'd love to connect and see if we should play together. Are you tired of always hearing about Silicon Valley VCs and not knowing what the greats of European VC are thinking? Well, no more. Head on over to EU.VC, the go-to place for everything European VC. You'll find podcasts, events, and expert curated content from all over the EUVC scene. Well, what are you waiting for? Go to EU.VC.
Hey, Daniel, welcome to the show. Mark and I am super happy to have you with us. And before we start talking about today's topic, we would like to do a quick check-in. And I ask an online generator, actually, what question the one is that you should answer. And the question is, what do you find most disgusting? Interesting.
Ooh. That's a hard question because I eat everything. So I don't have a food that I find especially disgusting. I would say, not in the taste sense, but the screeching of nails on a chalkboard. Exactly. That's the same reaction.
I can't. Oh.
Just thinking of it gives me the shivers.
Yeah, same.
Okay, we feel you. We definitely feel you. Although I think it's quite crazy that you eat everything. That's...
Oh wait, actually, there's one thing that I've eaten where I had to tell the restaurant owner that I can't eat it, and it was at a Uyghur restaurant in Amsterdam, goat's hooves, so trotters. That was the only time in my life where I couldn't eat a meal. So I guess that's the second to the screeching of nails.
But is it because it was disgusting or because it was kind of, sometimes you just have this, the brain cannot process that you...
No. It was disgusting. I couldn't, it was, the taste of mutton, but if you left it out in the sun for a day. Okay. So it was yeah, I felt very sorry for giving it back because I've never had to give back anything before or couldn't eat something. So thanks for reminding me of that, Katharina.
Maybe walking down this road, one follow-on question. Have you ever tried haggis?
I have, and I love it. I love haggis. Okay. Haggis is delicious.
Oh, wow. Okay. He really does.
Would that be your choice, Mark, or why you were asking that question?
I really find the concept disgusting. Right, so it already starts there. I've never tried it, and I've tried a great deal of things, but this is like the pure concept of it is just But
awesome. Regardless, great. I mean, now we kind of checked in. We did a first check-in, know more about each other than before. But of course, Daniel, you should have the stage first before diving into the topic. Who are you? What was important on your way so far? And ideally also, how are you connected to urban areas?
Well, I've lived in a lot of cities. That's the first thing. I grew up in Hong Kong. My mom's from Taipei. My father's from the German countryside, close to Basel, actually. Studied near Koblenz at WHU, did my exchange semester in the mega city of Beijing, and started my career in Hong Kong at Food Panda, which is a food delivery service. So that was definitely had a big urban context, because we were starting out in Hong Kong, and we had to map the whole city for delivery areas and rider allocation, hiring of riders, unique aspects of the city. Nobody drives a scooter in Hong Kong if they don't earn money with it. So you don't have any students that you can hire, but only professional drivers, stuff like that. Yeah, a big boss in Europe, in Berlin, said, last time I was in Bangkok, everyone rode a scooter. It's not going to be different in Hong Kong, right? So these kind of things also connected me to urban context. After that, I founded wundertax in Berlin, tax preparation service. We started for students, became a general tool for employees. Left the company, co-founded Scaling Spaces, a company for shared office spaces, so co-working. Did that for a year, was only interim-wise there, moved to Amsterdam, got back into marketing for a moving platform, so where you can book moving companies. Stayed there in Amsterdam for 4 years, and also where I met my girlfriend, Tanya, who was also a guest at the 2BX podcast.
So. Great.
Ooh, yeah. She's an urban planner doing that at the municipality of Amsterdam. Now she is doing a PhD in urban studies at Bauhaus University. So big connection there all the time, speaking about cities. And after 4 years in Amsterdam, I actually moved back to Berlin, and I'm back at my old company, wundertax, doing tax returns. And we actually launched, how we got talking, we launched the Grundsteuererklärung, the property tax return, mid of last year. And this is, of course, is a tax return that every property owner has to hand in for every property that they have in Germany. Big topic, space for another podcast, for a whole other podcast. But that was the first reason why we got in touch. And yeah, happy to be here.
Property tax, speaking of things that are disgusting again, right?
Property tax return.
No, not the property tax itself, but maybe one follow-on question. I studied economics and law, and obviously we had tax law, a lot of tax law, unfortunately, and there always has been, and I mean this in the best way, a special treat of people really liking those topics. And because I think 9 out of 10 people would say, wow, tax, this is the opposite of fun, right? So how the hell did you end up with the idea of, saying, you know what, I work 10 hours a day on a topic like tax, right? Because it seems to be like a great deal of fun. Yeah,
and you chose that twice in life.
Oh yeah, twice. Yeah. So either you're fully nuts or you really love tax. Right.
The cliche answer that startup people always say is fall in love with the problem, right? And the thing is, though, that I think I know everyone can relate to, except for the nut jobs that you just mentioned. Everyone can relate to it if I say I hate tax returns. You sit down you give up your Saturday to do your tax returns, and it's the worst thing in the world. Right? Like nothing is certain but death and taxes. Benjamin Franklin. So I would say that that's the main driver of my motivation to say, like, okay, we're actually solving this huge headache of hundreds and thousands of people each year. And it's a lovely tech problem to solve, because, the automations that we're doing, the UX that we're doing are basically the tax forms. You can see it as one big UX funnel, right? One big funnel to work through. And then at the end, they purchase the tax return. So the problem is just amazing. The tax return themselves, guess who's one of those typical people that hands it in on the 31st of October? on the deadline day. It's definitely me.
You have to hand them in on the 31st of October?
Oh, this year it's the 2nd of October. It's Germany is really weird in the whole Corona and moving the deadline back and forth.
For what
this year?
Years?
This. If you have to do your tax return for last year.
No.
Good to know.
Now it's time to dive into the topic, I guess.
Yes. So, Daniel, and for those who listen to us who might wonder, okay, so what does urban areas have to do with taxes and stuff like that? We hope to give you the answer that is more than you might think of. Because when we look at urban areas, we've discussed this in past podcasts and in many blog posts and everything. One of the main concepts that is coming up again and again is the 15-minute city. It solves a lot of the issues that we're facing in urban areas at the moment, and I'll dive into this problem in a minute into this concept in a minute to explain and create a common understanding of what a 15-minute city is. But the idea basically was to say, okay, look, what tax implementations or what tax instruments or governmental instruments can be used to actually incentivize such concepts as a 15-minute city that actually help resolve urban challenges.
Or disincentivize, I think.
Exactly. So this is one of the huge pillars that we're having when we're looking at how we're dealing economically, right? On a huge scale, one of the biggest levers that we're having is taxes, right? Or are taxes. And this is what we want to discuss with you today. So thank you for being here again. And now let's briefly get a common understanding of what a 15-minute city is, right? So that we're looped in on this topic. In a 15-minute city, basically it is a planning concept, right? So it is established, or what it shall create is a city where you can get into everything, every amenity of your day-to-day life within 15 minutes. There are either per bike or by walking, and then there are some fields where it's discussed also via public transport, but definitely without cars, right? So without these space-consuming, inefficient in terms of numbers, ways of moving people around. And that results in totally different planning concepts compared to those we are having right now in European urban areas in particular, because you have to have all the amenities, all the basic services and needs within those distance. So these concepts can, in theory and also in practice, like for example in Barcelona or in Paris, increase health, increase regional economy, and can do a great deal to community and to the livability of a city. Yet, like on a theoretical and also on a practical basis from first examples, it seems like a great deal. But the whole topic of we as a society incentivizing or disincentivizing certain behavioral changes that are necessary for those concepts to come alive is something that, in our opinion, sometimes is a little bit overlooked. So if we want to sum it up, 15-minute city means everything you need: school, work, groceries, doctors, everything within 15-minute walking distance, biking distance, and for our purpose, public transport distance, door to door. So this is the concept that we're talking about. And now, Daniel, I would hand it over to you for you to explain a little bit in general, so that we have a common understanding here and not leaning into a misconception of what a tax is and what not, right? To loop us in on what are taxes. You are the expert here. Why are we having them? And why do we need to discuss them if we want to rapidly change or massively change behavior of the majority of people in urban areas?
Well, I think to start off, the common understanding of most people of taxes is it's the income generator for governments, right? You pay taxes so that they provide you with services, roads, etc. But what people always, or the normal consumer often overlooks is, like you just said, taxes are an instrument of influencing decisions, influencing the economy, influencing infrastructural change and just private behavior. So the government can use taxes in their policy making to incentivize and disincentivize certain behaviors, right? And I think what's interesting is there are, of course, things that governments can directly influence, such as saying, okay, tax breaks for solar panels on the balcony, which Berlin is doing right now. But in general, like for instance, the concept of climate change, Berlin or cities or governments can't directly influence, we are going to reduce our CO2 footprint, right? It's a meta concept. The same thing with 15-minute cities. But there are a lot of levers to get to those meta concepts, right? Such as saying every balcony can have a little solar panel. That's for instance a tax instrument to influence private behavior.
I think everybody is familiar with, for example, VAT, right? And we had this during COVID. We had this VAT reduction, right? So this I think is a very good example as well. Like not in urban context, but generally, how you can like stimulate economy by using taxes.
Economics 101 or microeconomics 101, if something is more expensive, people tend to buy less of it. So, right? Or other way, or vice versa. So I think the most obvious example is smoking. Governments don't want people to smoke because of all the societal damage that it has, also strain on the health system, etc. So you put an extra tax called an excise tax on, for instance, tobacco, so that people smoke less because it's more expensive.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the concept now, like on different levels, is clear. So thank you for looping us in on that. Daniel, let's look at Germany for now, right? And with the concept of the 15-minute city in mind, can you give us some examples of, let's say, good tax incentivization schemes that we're having right now that lean towards those concepts or could be helpful for these concepts? Or can you give us some examples of tax schemes that are pointing in the directly opposite, that we need to change if we want to have a proper incentivization scheme towards a 15-minute city?
So I think the most graspable example for most people is public transportation, right? The 50, or just in general, mobility as a concept. So in the 15-minute city, you want cities to be walkable. You want cities to be not drivable, but bikeable. Yes, but bikeable and using public transportation, right? So for great examples, in my opinions, are, for instance, on the federal level, the €9 ticket that we had in Germany for during the summer of, was it last year? Or 2 years?
Yes.
It's the summer of last year where we had the €9 ticket on a federal level. Amazing. People that never take a public transportation suddenly took public transportation. On a state level in Germany, Berlin as a state government heavily subsidized the Berlin ticket with the €29 ticket. So in the months between the 49 ticket and the €9 ticket, Berlin subsidized the public transportation system so people could buy the €29 ticket for public transportation. It was a direct incentivization to get people to commute with public transportation. Luxembourg, first country to do it countrywide on the 1st of March in 2020, free public transportation for all residents and non-residents as well. What I think, for instance, is a wasted opportunity, though, is the €49 ticket, because it's just too much for a lot of people that they will feel it, right? It doesn't. It's also a big subsidy. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy it's it's a step in the right direction. But I would have wished for it to be even cheaper, so even more accessible.
I mean, it depends on the goal you're looking at, right? I mean, if the goal is that other people that usually don't take public transport use it now, for them it's to not incentivization, it's not enough. For the others, it's another incentivization of like having lower costs for sure, but different.
Exactly. But so these are like mostly positive examples. But like, for instance, in Germany, through our extremely strong car lobby, we have certain tax breaks that incentivize long distance travel. So such as the Mobilitätsprämie. People, if they take the Pendlerpauschale for that matter, if people drive to work or take even public transportation, etc., they get 30 cents per kilometer for one way that are tax deductible. But from the 21st kilometer onwards, they actually get 38 cents per kilometer, meaning it's directly incentivization to have a long commute to work. And in my opinion, or let's say in the interest of the 15-minute city, this is exactly the wrong direction. It should be actually the other way around. You should get more money for closer commutes than for further commutes.
This is an interesting concept, because you could also argue, right, that cities, for example, when it comes to rent and the cost of owning properties or a flat or an apartment is already very high. So now if you incentivize the people who are already living in those areas, who will have a shorter commute, incentivize them for this shorter commute, I think I'm with you on the topic, but you could kind of like drive even more inequality in a society to those instruments if implemented wrong, right? So it's not, I think a big learning here is it's not as easy as saying we have to get rid of the commuter subsidies, right? Or just restructure them. But as soon as we restructure them, we need to find a counter lever, right? To not foster inequality, right?
Yeah. But having said that, having this long distance commute from the 20th kilometer onwards, I would say it does make it easier, economically speaking, for people to move further away from their point of work. I'm completely with you on this, right? Like if people can't afford to live in people that already gentrify the place, if they get subsidized even more, of course it could lead to more inequality. These are big studies that you'd have to do on a macroeconomical level that we can't answer in this podcast. But I would say that the 38 cents per kilometer from the 21st kilometer onwards does incentivize people to have longer commutes into work, which directly counters the 15-minute concept. Right.
Because we have to explain this maybe, right, if that's unclear. These tax incentive schemes are there to kind of like subsidize the costs that you're having in running the vehicle. But the interesting thing is that with these numbers per kilometer, you're actually subsidizing more than the running costs or the operating expenses, as we as a VC would say, but you're also subsidizing amortization of the asset itself or depreciation of the asset value, right? And that is, I think, this is one of the biggest problems. We're not even talking operating costs, we're talking way more operating costs that is being subsidized. I think that is a huge problem. I mean, one thing also with regards to complexity of these schemes, and what is interesting and what we always have to keep in mind is like, take public transport again, right? And the 49 euro ticket that you explained. It is interesting that the people who are mostly using public transport are the ones who are already living in the outskirts, right? So where it typically gets cheaper. The people who can afford to live in the city center, which is now, let's say, in 15-minute walking distance from their work or maybe from their kindergarten, right? They have enough money to afford living there, which is getting increasingly expensive. So they're not even using the public transport, right? Yet we're not making public transport free for all, right? Which is kind of a conundrum to me. And what I always wondering is, and maybe you can touch upon that, I sometimes have a feeling that, and that might be a more German topic, but we have 3 layers of tax administrations and legal decision makers when it comes to tax, right? We have the regions, we have the federal states, and then we have so Berlin, like in the whole country where certain taxes are decided. How is that structure? How would you change those structure in order to create tax schemes that are more applicable to the needs of society in general?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think that also dives into, like the whole topic of federalism, who should decide what, etc. So I'll give you maybe a different example from where I lived for 4 years, which is Amsterdam. It's a very interesting debate because the country of the Netherlands, for instance, they incentivized expats to come in. Mm-hmm. So I was also a beneficiary of this because once you fulfill certain criteria, you are working in the knowledge economy, you move to the Netherlands, you get a tax break of 30%. So 30% of your gross income is just simply not taxed. You just get it gross into your bank account, right? So it's a huge tax break for expats. So expats were storming into the country or are storming into the country, right? Amsterdam, amazing city, lots of fun. We've all been there. We've all made mistakes there, right?
Talking for yourself here. I'm free of guilt. I throw the first stone.
But that's the thing, right? Like it was decided on a federal level. So the country of the Netherlands decided it, and everyone was all the expats were rushing into or most of them were rushing into Amsterdam. And Amsterdam has an expat problem. Like it's leading to a lot of gentrification of the areas, extremely high housing prices in the city centers. Also just the fact that expats, they don't have the local connections. They could go into the country. They have to take the expensive apartment, et cetera, which all leads to housing inflation, taking away the jobs of locals, et cetera. And I would say on a net level, it's still positive for the country itself because it's bringing innovation. It's bringing a lot of high income people, highly educated people, but residents in Amsterdam, like it's the cliche, right? Residents in Amsterdam, young people, once they get their first child, they have to move out because there's no way they can afford any apartments that is halfway livable. So this is a very, obviously I'm not a policymaker such as Tanya was. But it's a discrepancy between the tax system of the federal government and a discrepancy of the municipality. So it was a decision of the very liberal federal government, and the city government for the longest time I was living in Amsterdam is very green left, is ruled by the Green Left Party. Yeah. So it was a huge discrepancy in these policies, which directly affected Amsterdam, which the municipality government had to practically counteract. So this is one of the more obvious examples that I have. For Germany, of course, there's even an extra level, which is basically the state level as well, because obviously Netherlands, small country, the states that they have don't have that much power. But like in Germany, you also have the state, which is in our federal system quite independent in their own policy making, right? So this is a huge debate, right? Like how much can small entities control versus how much should the federal government control? And by extension, how much the EU, et cetera. Like this is a huge and interesting debate.
I think taxes, they are a super relevant instrument in that environment, in urban environments. But one has to acknowledge that with every decision taken, or there are two sides of the coin. So even if you have the goal to incentivize one thing, it comes with a disadvantage in another context. This is why it's so political. Even if it's good for something, talking about the expats coming into the country, there are disadvantages for others. I think the important thing here is that it has to make sense, and you have to be willing to run into the other side of the coin as well, and to kind of be transparent about that and say it will be worth having that. It's not cool to have that, but we cannot ignore that.
The example of mobility, people living from in the outskirts that have less income, it subsidizes these people that they can actually work in the city. If it doesn't exist, they wouldn't be able to work in the city. They'd have to, have an extreme a haircut on their quality of life by moving closer because they don't have the subsidy anymore. Yeah, it's a delicate topic. It's
in
a
the
very
city,
delicate.
yeah, but in the cities that we are living in right now, right? What you're describing is exactly the problem, right? Because we have monocentric city structures, right, where everything's happening in one place.
Yeah,
If we would plan cities in a way that even in the outskirts where it is cheaper to live, right, or not as expensive, you would have the necessary jobs, infrastructure, by
absolutely
to fulfill your jobs and to earn your money. That would have an equalization effect also on inflation of prices in hot parts of the city, you know, where like everybody wants to go, and these kind of things. So one last question.
Yeah.
Let's assume I would be the head urban planner of Berlin with almost autocratic ruling power and governmental power, no matter on what level, whether it is state, city, or federal state, right? And I would ask you to implement one incentive or tax scheme and get rid of one in order to favor people into a 15-minute city. What would be kind of like the one instrument that you would get rid of, and that what would be the one instrument that you would immediately implement?
It's a great question because there are so many levers, but I think because we already started with it, I think one of the biggest levers that I see is mobility. Absolutely mobility. Public transportation, bikes, and extreme disincentivization of cars, especially in the inner city. I get that people on the countryside, they need cars to go shopping, to get their kids, etc. But like somebody who lives in the city center and has to walk to work and uses their car once for a weekend excursion, you know, what the hell, man? Yeah. What the hell? You know, get rid extreme disincentivization of cars in the inner city and getting rid of the Firmenwagen, the work-sponsored cars. Yeah. So work-sponsored incentivization schemes, because having cars in the inner city is just nuts. If you want to go on the weekend, if you want to go to one of the lakes, take an Uber. It's the oldest sharing concept in the world. Taxis. Yeah. The problem with cars is not the CO2 that they emit when they drive. It's the CO2 that is emitted when they are produced.
There's a great big deal more of problems when it comes to cars, right? Do not tell our current minister, right? But, thank you so much. So to sum it up. Yeah, you sum it up. That's even you sum it up.
In the urban context, cars down, public transportation and biking up.
Okay, so no VAT on bikes, public transport for free, and double the tax, the moving tax, like a congestion tax or whatsoever, higher tax on parking spaces, revenues, all these kind of things.
I really don't like being... At the heart, I'm still quite liberal in the sense you can choose to have a car. If you want to have a car, if you have to have a car, then get a car. But it just has to cost you an arm and a leg. Yeah? And that extra money that the government earns through that disincentivization, because again, remember, taxes are also income for the government. Use that money to fund public transportation. Yeah, I didn't do the calculations. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
We will quote you on this, Daniel. You can be sure for that. I mean, it's like preaching to the choir here, right? So I think we're totally aligned. It's not about taking things away from people. It's just like make everybody pay for the choices and for the consequences that these choices are having.
Internalize negative externalities, which is, parking, land consumption through car parks, CO2, and just resource consumption that private car ownership brings.
Okay, then thank you for your statement. I would vote for you. No. We will come to the checkout then, and to close our sessions.
Already.
We always love to do a quick fire round. So we want to ask you 10 questions, and there is an A or an B question. You have to decide very fast. Not thinking about it, okay?
And not cheating and things like both or neither. Or,
okay.
Or let's talk about what does this mean, yeah?
It's about this or that.
Bike or public transport?
Public transport.
Growth or security?
Growth, definitely growth, yeah.
Work from home or from the office?
From the office.
Ninjas or pirates?
Ninjas.
Amsterdam or Hong Kong?
Hong Kong.
Toys or candy?
Toys.
Environmental or social impact?
Environmental.
Book smarts or street smarts?
Street.
Yeah. My man. Build from scratch or scale growth?
Build from scratch.
Last one, calling or texting?
I have to say texting.
I mean, that's fine.
And in person.
Thank you for joining us, Daniel. We had to do it like remotely, or we chose to do this podcast remotely, but always happy to meet you in person. You can always write as a text if you prefer to. But we are looking to keeping in touch with you and to hear a lot more and feel more about to see taxes as an instrument and to rethink the bad image taxes have.
Thanks a lot. It was a great conversation. I love to bounce this. It was a bit of a more abstract concept, but I love to bounce these ideas off of you. Maybe one last thing. I also believe taxes or tax breaks, subsidies are also a great driver of business and innovation. So think of what I mentioned earlier, the solar panels on the balcony. Yeah, this is a huge business opportunity which Berlin is subsidizing through direct investment in this case. But I encourage every founder or business operator to think about, how do taxes not just negatively, because you have to pay, not how they just negatively influence you, but what are the opportunities that are there?
I think that is a great remark, and I assume you'd be open for everyone reaching out and
absolutely, please do.
Here. So thank you, then also from my side. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion. Hope to see you soon again.
Cheers!
Awesome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Urban Tech VC, a podcast for urban leaders shaping the cities of tomorrow. If you love our show, do drop us a review, share it with your friends, and follow 2BX on LinkedIn or Instagram. And if you are about to raise a round, drop us a note at LinkedIn or via email at idea@2bx.vc. Let's have a talk and see where we can help. Are you tired of always hearing about Silicon Valley VCs and not knowing what the greats of European VC are thinking? Well, no more. Head on over to EU.vc, the go-to place for everything European VC. You'll find podcasts, events, and expert-curated content from all over the EUVC scene. Well, what are you waiting for? Go to EU.vc.